So this project turned out being way bigger than what I realized it was going to be. But it's broke into sections, and each section is kind of self-contained. And since I have this first part done, I didn't want to make you wait any longer. Not that anyone's like, oh, please come out, but okay, you know what I mean. So I know on TikTok, I usually just put everything out at once, but like this video is going to be, I think, over an hour long. So I'll put that out. And actually I have everything filmed. It's just, oh my gosh, I have learned a lot. I get it now when YouTubers talk about like, oh, the editing. Yeah, that takes a long time. And so what I'm going to do is put out the first part and then just keep working on it. And as soon as I have the second part out, I'm going to put it out. And I think it's going to end up being 3 parts. Hello. Okay, so I would recommend watching the Lisa Frank deep dive that I did for TikTok first before watching this video, because I'm probably going to reference it. And I mean, you can still watch this. I'm just saying there probably will be parts that don't fully make sense. I uploaded it to YouTube, so you don't need to go to TikTok to watch it. So let's just start at the beginning with Lisa Frank and go down the timeline. Lisa Frank, if you don't know, she was, well, she's a brand and a person. Growing up in the 90s, anyone who grew up in the 90s will probably know who she is because she had her artwork on all sorts of school supplies, like peaches and pencils, stickers, yeah, all sorts of stuff like that.
I'll never forget the day I got stuck on Lisa Frank. The stickers were so cool. The colors were awesome. I gotta find more. So I go to the store. And wow, there's tons of awesome Lisa Frank stuff. I gotta have it. What more can I say?
Okay, so Lisa Frank was born, my computer is right here, by the way, that's what I'm looking at, and I'm smiling because I'm still really excited to have a computer. Okay, so Lisa was born in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and she attended this pretty elite school. On some websites you'll see it said she went to Kingswood School. Well, I believe Kingswood has like different schools under it. Like they're all a part of Kingswood School, but each school under it will have like a different name. The school that Lisa Frank went to is called Cranbrook. I'm putting corrections in already. I was hoping I wouldn't have to put corrections in this video. Okay, but here I am. I figured something out. So Kingswood and Cranbrook used to be a boys' school and a girls' school. So Kingswood was the girls' school, Cranbrook was the boys' school. Now it's co-ed, and so that's why I was finding both names. And I was like, I was trying to make it make sense, you know. I saw something that I thought was interesting on the Cranbrook School website in their alumni section. Let me start a screen recording, because I have a computer, to show you what I noticed. Meet our alumni, Cranbrook School. You scroll, 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 and there's some, look, Selma Blair. Very well-to-do people. I don't know who most of these people are. Oh, stop. Scroll, scroll, scroll. I don't see Lisa. I don't see Lisa. I see this guy, but not Lisa. I see, oh my goodness, Alfie, stop. Oh look, Ann and Mitt Romney, those are some pretty well-to-do people. No Lisa, nope, nope, nope. They don't have her listed. They do have her on this list though. All Lisa gets is 1 bullet point under business. That's it. Interesting, don't you think? A little interesting? Maybe that's a sign that they know how she acts. I don't know, but we'll see. Let's keep going. So I have this quote from Lisa where she's talking about the school actually. She says, I can tell you I wouldn't be who I am without that experience. I had a senior show of the paintings I made when I was a student there. They were up on the wall. I sold out of them and received a ton of commissions. Lee Iacocca, former president of Chrysler, bought a painting. So before she even goes to school, because in the TikTok I talked about how she went to school in Arizona, but she was already selling like art to really well-to-do people, and those are connections she had because of her family's elite standing. How else would she be meeting these people? You know, when you go to an elite school, I feel like that's the whole point. You're paying a lot of money at this elite school because you want opportunities, more opportunities. So next, Lisa goes to college in Arizona, and she starts selling art, Native American art. So she meets artists in Arizona and sells their art when she goes back home to Michigan. And I have this quote from Lisa. In college, I had to support myself, so in the beginning, I went to the Indian reservations. I would sell their art and jewelry. I still have a big Native American art collection because of the fact. Jumping ahead, I would later tell them what to make and realize that everything I told them versus what they wanted to make on their own sold. A light bulb went on. I thought, oh, I guess I really have commercial sense. There's something about this line. Where is it? And I realized that everything I told them versus what they wanted to make on their own sold. Something about that sentence really rubs me the wrong way. I think it's because, so this is Native art. So you're with like so much history and heritage behind it. And it's like, can you make green aliens, please? Like, oh, well, I don't know what she was asking them to make. That was just an example, but that's like, ooh, I don't like that. Okay, so I was wondering, is this exploitation? Is she exploiting them? And my conclusion is we don't have enough information to know if she's exploiting them. I can't find other quotes of Lisa talking about it, is the point that I'm saying. Maybe they're out there, I just didn't see them. And so I think it really all comes back to this quote, and then people are extrapolating. In my TikTok video, I had some comments. Here, let's look at them. Saying, like, okay, here's one. So she made her money initially from exploiting Native American culture by buying and upselling their art. Wow. And then here's another one. Wow, exploitation, huh? Glad I didn't own her products. She bought them, then resold them across the country. Now their artwork has been spread. It'd be different if she claimed it was her artwork or stole it. And those are just a couple. I had a few people. There's more. You know, I just picked some. And I blacked the names out just because people are voicing their opinion and it's kind of a dialogue. I was worried like someone might disagree with what they said and come after them. So I just blacked their names out. So this is the way I look at it. For a living, I'm an artist. I'm a graphic designer. That's what I do. That's my only job. That's how I make my money. And I do work for different people. So I do work for some people where I'm just working directly with the client. And then I do other jobs where I'm working with people who they are upselling my work. They have a client and they tell that client, I'm going to take care of you. Let me get your printing needs and whatever. And I never actually even meet the client. I just do the graphic design and I give those people a different rate because they are upselling my artwork. And as long as we are both in agreement and there is no deception going on, and I'm saying, yes, I 100% agree with what you're doing and you 100% agree with what I'm doing, then that's our agreement and we decided that with each other, and that's really between us two. So is Lisa making good agreements with the natives? Is she giving a fair rate? Nobody's in a position where they feel like they have to do something. Is it, you know, do you see what I'm saying? Like, if this is an adult and Lisa's an adult and they have a decision and an agreement together and that's what they want to do, then they can do that. We just don't know enough. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if Lisa Frank was exploiting these people, because I'm not at all trying to defend her. I'm just saying I don't know. We don't know. And then does it change? I'm not native, so does that factor change from me to them? Like, does my story, is it different if I were a native person? I just don't know enough. And so I guess that was my point. Let's just move, I'm gonna move on, but something for thought. How about that? Next, we're going to move into talking about the Lisa Frank factory and everything that goes along with that. For anything to do with treatment in the factory, if you want to read more about this, there is so much on this article. It's a Jezebel article called Inside the Rainbow Gulag, the Technicolor Rise and Fall of Lisa Frank. This is the article you want to read. so much information. You're going to start reading it and just not be able to stop. I'm going to give you some of the highlights. Okay, so for this next section, I'm going to be going over the really informative Jezebel article, and I'm losing my voice if you couldn't tell. But I'm still learning how to make these videos, so I'm not sure if I've spent too much time explaining the article. This is like a big chunk of the video. For that reason, I put timestamps in the description, so you can, if I'm spending too much time on this part, you can just look at the description and go to the next section, because I have some really entertaining stuff after that. So please don't click off if I've spent too much time on the article. And please let me know, so then in the future, I can do less of this and more of other stuff. I'm trying to learn is what I'm saying, but maybe I haven't spent too much time. Maybe it is entertaining. Do you see? Okay, anyway, the point is I'm trying to learn, so please let me know, and then I can take what I've learned and implement it in future videos. One of the first things I was looking at was, how do her former employees describe her? And everyone, I thought it was going to be a personality thing, and everyone was describing her physical features, and I thought, strange. Well, they said they were describing that first. They may have said other things afterwards, but the first thing everyone was mentioning was how she looked. Because I normally wouldn't just start sharing Lisa Frank's figure, but because this is how they described her, I'm going to share it. So, okay, they changed the name of this former employee to Karen, and this article was written in like 2013, and I think nowadays if this article was written, they would never use that name. Karen worked in sales department at Lisa Frank in the early 2000s. Okay, she was very beauty focused, obsessed with her body image and her waning youth, which Karen believes contributes to Frank's reclusive nature. Well, she's getting older now. She kept getting, I don't know if it was plastic surgery, but she kept getting these lotions talking about youth. Have you met her? She's like 2 pounds, she said, adding. She just doesn't want to eat because she doesn't want to look fat or ugly or whatever she thinks. And this is the thing. This is one employee. How does she know what Lisa wants to eat or not? Did Lisa say she didn't want to eat? Like, this is one person's opinion, is what I'm saying. I didn't even feel comfortable reading that. So let's move on. So Jacob was an illustrator with the company for 4 years, and his thoughts were that the Lisa Frank company, it could have been really popular with like the hipster market, for instance. The company is still a company now, but it's not where it was. It's had a downfall. And he thinks one of the reasons is because to really be successful, you have to have compassionate leadership and people who can appreciate and nurture talent. He said they didn't have either of those. Pretty much saying it's the management that's the problem. That's why they're not succeeding. Nothing to do with their product. Oh, Karen's back. She has another quote. Actually, Karen has a ton of quotes in this article. I think Karen might have like the most quotes. They must have like interviewed her for a while. She says, I don't think Frank and Green, James Green, and see, I'm sorry, I haven't explained who he is because I explained that in my TikTok. James Green was the CEO of Lisa Frank and was Lisa Frank's husband. He is no longer either of those. Okay. I don't think Frank and Green have a lot of business acumen, said Karen. I don't think they ever did. I think Lisa's parents funded this start of her company. She's an artist. She is not a business person. The problem wasn't business. The problem was personal. The problem was Lisa Frank. The problem was James Green. And the problem was Rhonda Rowlett. Rhonda Rowlett was VP of Lisa Frank. They interviewed this lady named Caroline. She was going to apply for a job opening. They had a high turnover rate, so I think there were a lot of job openings in Tucson back in the day. She says, every single person I talked to advised me to avoid Lisa Frank at all costs. I do not know a single person who had not heard horror stories about the work environment there. And as we get into this, I'm going to be showing you court documents because there was a lawsuit. A lot of this has been documented and it's just right there to see. Okay, and this is our first court document. Let's take a look. What does it say? What was once a vibrant environment full of energy and promise has become a place of intimidation and insecurity. The current management style has been counterproductive, and to my understanding, sales are down. The turnover rate of the employees is very high. Morale is low. The company has a bad reputation in the community. The word in Tucson is that you don't want to work for Lisa Frank Company. Right there. They're sworn in when they say these statements. They got to tell the truth. They have so many quotes. This article is so good. I mean, the content is sad, but this article, like, the person who wrote this did an excellent job. And this is the article everybody references when they talk about it because they did such a good job. There's no point to redo it. I go over this in the TikTok, but I'll mention it now just so I'm making sense. So Lisa used to run the day-to-day at the factory. She meets James Green. He's working at the factory. She makes him CEO. Well, he moves up along. They get married. They have kids. Yada, yada, yada. Lisa decides, I want to be at home with my kids. And she leaves James in charge of the day-to-day. And like with the shares, Lisa gives him 49% and Lisa has 51%. So she gives that to him. In about 1995, Lisa relinquished day-to-day management duties to Green and Rowlett. Oh yeah, let me mention Rowlett. Rhonda Rowlett was the VP. Her and James form like this bond, and they say it's a not-so-secret that they are also having an affair. And they are the ones, and they run it for like 10 years, and they are the ones that run the Lisa Frank Company into the ground. But people say, well, Lisa was there. It was her company, and so when Lisa is in charge, it's in fact her fault. If she's delegating, and the people she delegated do abuse people, then Lisa is also at fault. She is not innocent. Do you see what I'm saying? So Green and Rowlett, they form this close personal bond and secret partnership with each other, and they become the de facto administrative management of Lisa Frank Inc. And this is what all the court stuff is about, because when Lisa and James divorce, James does not want to step down. Lisa wants to take control of the factory again, and James is like, no, I've been doing this for 10 years. Me and Rhonda run it now, and that's that. So I'm going to be talking about James Green, Rhonda Rowlett, and her name is a tongue twister, and Lisa Frank. Let's start with James, CEO, husband of Lisa, no longer husband, no longer CEO, but was. So James uses Rhonda kind of like his enforcer. He has her do his bidding. James is prone to fits of rage and loud profanity-laden outbursts, which he publicly berate people, including his then-wife, Frank. Green was described as abusive, arrogant, extremely difficult to work with. He was throwing chairs and other objects in the office. That's James. His management style was described as intimidation. Have you ever had a boss like that? The type that just, it's like, you don't have to be mean to me. I would do my job so much better if you would just treat me like a human. They don't get it. Whenever he hasn't liked someone or they have crossed him in some way, he makes their work life miserable by constant abusive comments and harassment. Usually then they resign and he moves on to someone else that he can intimidate. So that's disgusting. Really think about this. Do you know what that reminds me of? Have you ever dated a guy that does not want to date you anymore, but he doesn't want to break up either because that's a chore to him? Oh, he can't be bothered. So he just starts treating you awful and ignoring you until you break up with him. And then he didn't have to do it. He didn't have to break up with you. That's what it reminds me of, this behavior. He also, there's accounts of him not learning people's names and just giving them nicknames. Apparently he wore a lot of cologne and had a Napoleon complex too. Okay, now you've heard about James. Let's move on to Rhonda Rowlett, the VP, the one who's doing James's dirty work. Rhonda Rowlett is the enforcer. James uses her to maintain control of the employees. Through Rhonda, employees' jobs are threatened and an atmosphere of hostility is maintained. Employees are consistently called to her office and subjected to threats of harassment. Rhonda does what James asks. Even Rhonda has often been the receiver of his abuse, and many have wondered why she has taken it for so long. He sometimes has been heard screaming at her from his office to hers, and has been heard calling her fat or stupid or belittling her. There are also accounts of him yelling at Lisa. It sounds like this is how he treats the women he's intimate with. Okay, I'm getting back onto James and trying to talk about Rhonda. So Rhonda is his enforcer. She does his bidding, and she's also being abused by him. She's both the abuser and the person being abused. So that's Rhonda. It was a not so secret that James and Rhonda were having an affair. And actually, James and Rhonda run a business together right now. And at the end of this part, I'll talk about that. So they are still working together. And yeah. So one employee tells this story of how it's a holiday weekend, it's 4th of July, and they run into James and Rhonda at the mall. And they at first were like, oh, hi, I work with these people, hello. But then they were like, Rhonda isn't talking much. And then it hit them. Why are they together during a holiday weekend? Normally people spend holiday weekends with their families, so they just thought it was strange that them two were together in the mall. And it made sense why Rhonda wasn't talking, because they're like, ooh, this doesn't look good. We've kind of been caught. But not really. If you're the opposite sex and you already work together, I mean, it does look a little fishy. It's not for certain just by running into someone at the mall that they're having an affair. This is just one factor, I think, in many. Now, let's just look at what it said. It said, my wife and I, Mary Jean Miller, were shopping in a Tucson mall over the 4th of July weekend. It's 2005. I stopped by the Lisa Frank retail store in the mall. We were surprised to see James and Rhonda together in the store on a 3-day weekend. Oh, I didn't get that part when I first read it. They're at the Lisa Frank retail store. Maybe they were just doing work stuff then. That's not that strange. I don't know. They're at the Lisa Frank store. They run Lisa Frank. It's the CEO and the VP. We were surprised to see James and Rhonda together in the store on that 3-day weekend. We had a short conversation with James. Rhonda didn't say much. After we left them, we both thought it strange that they would be together, and that Rhonda acted sort of caught off guard at seeing us and acted uncomfortable. We wondered why James wasn't with his family and Rhonda wasn't with her husband on a holiday weekend. Something wasn't right. I don't know, it just sounds like they were working, whether they were having an affair or not having an affair. I didn't catch that first part. So now that I know that information, I just don't think it's that strange. But yeah, there's that. Okay, so we've talked about James, we've talked about Rhonda, we've talked about Rhonda and James. You already know, getting cramp in my foot. I'm sitting on my bed, I have a table that rolls over it, so like, I'm just like sitting on my bent legs. Foot cramp. Okay, and I don't really think I need to give an introduction to Lisa, because you know who Lisa is, and I just talked about her childhood and growing up and stuff like that. Okay, so if you worked at the Lisa Frank factory, they had a lot of really weird rules, and they're all kind of, you know, stemming from James Green. So they had this bi-monthly newsletter that would just go out to the employees of Lisa Frank, and it's called Frankly Speaking. But in it, they would inform employees how they were to behave, particularly regarding how they were expected to interact with James. So James had such a hang up and such an inferiority. I don't know. He sounds like a very insecure man. That he needs to twice a month let people know, hey, I need you to look at me like this. I need you to talk to me like this. Like, oh my goodness. He probably has to do that because he's not respecting people, so he's not garnering respect back. So this I thought was insane. The employees were not allowed to speak to each other. It was a place of silence. Also, they were recording phone calls illegally. Imagine how unsafe, knowing that anyone could be listening to you. Oh my goodness. Here's the court doc. He questioned my ability to my rep. My health benefits were then canceled. Conversations on the office lines with my counterparts were recorded and then played by Rhonda in her office. It's against Mass state law to record phone conversations without advising the participant at the onset of the call. Does Mass mean Massachusetts? Maybe she was talking to someone from Massachusetts, because that part's not explained. Or maybe it means something else. I'm not sure. Point is, that's not how you treat an employee. Nope. No visitors are allowed. Not even family members can come to visit you at work. So what happens if you break one of these rules? According to former employees, you could be screamed at. You could be verbally abused, and they could call you names. You could just be immediately terminated. Just done. And sometimes they might put more bizarre restrictions on you for breaking one of the restrictions. Lovely people. These sound like lovely people. There's an emphasis on productivity, but they said the rules were counterproductive. Oh my gosh, that's so stressful when you're in a work environment like that, where it's like, this would be so much better to do it this way, but you have like a boss who doesn't listen and is not open to learning, is not open to changing, is not open to doing something in a better way. Because their egos are so fragile and frail. It has to be their way. No other way. Everything is a threat to them. That sounds like James and Rhonda and Lisa. Everything's a threat. It's because of this work environment, they had an extremely high turnover rate. And you know that's always an indicator it's not a good place to work, is when they can't keep employees. In the article, it says, even in their peak, like when they're doing their best, they can't hold on to employees. So there's this incident where James discovered that an employee left 10 minutes early. He did not like this. He was irate from this. Well, he decides, I'm going to deadbolt and chain the door so that the employees cannot leave. Excuse me. So the staff couldn't escape. What if there was a fire? And what if someone just wanted to leave? You can't hold people at work. So the turnover rate's really high. One former employee says, in the short time I was employed by Lisa Frank Inc., over 80 people walked out the door, most without notice, because they were being treated so poorly. Without notice. Most people, if they're going to quit, even if the work environment is bad, they're going to give their 2 weeks. They're going to say, I'm leaving, because they just don't want to mess up anything for future jobs. To get to the point where you are going to stand up and walk out, you really need to be pushed. And this happened 80 times. And she said in the short time she was there. I think that says so much. The turnover rate wasn't just from people walking out. There was also random firings that would go on. Because James had anger management issues, and he would get a flare of anger and then fire somebody. Just, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone. So when you're working in that environment, that's an environment of fear and anxiety. You do not want to get on his bad side, because you could just be gone. There is no sense of security. Any day could be your last. It was all about what James wants. So it sounds like people are getting fired just on whims. Like, is James in the mood to fire? That's what it sounds like. Oh my goodness. Since Lisa delegated to James, Lisa is just as responsible for what happens and what he does, because she is James's boss. This is the account of a former employee. This account is not from the court documents, though, just a heads up. It doesn't mean it's not true. It just means it's not from the court documents. She said she personally heard Lisa Frank screaming and threatening sales managers' lives when they messed up in a sales presentation. That's not how you treat people. So this next incident about Lisa is from the experience of Karen, who we've heard from a few times already. So Karen was fired from the Lisa Frank company for speaking to her father on the phone, and she did file a wrongful termination suit with Lisa Frank for that. So she runs into Lisa Frank at the salon. And this, like, a couple years have passed. And she says, she goes up to Lisa, and I said, "Oh, Lisa, remember me?" And then Lisa tells her, "Oh, did we fire you?" And so Karen's like, "Yeah." And Lisa says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I really wasn't a great employer." Lisa, too little, too late, honey. Okay, so this next incident is with James. Actually has to do with drugs. And I found that anytime I speak about them, and it's always in a negative light, by the way, the video does not do well. And so I was hesitant to mention this. So this is what I was thinking. I'll put the quote up about the incident, and if you don't want to hear about it, avert your eyes. I'll leave it on the screen, so if you do want to hear about it, you can read it. And then I'll say, okay, and then at that point, it'll be off of the screen. But this actually is really alarming and unethical. You don't do this to people. So here it is. Okay, so now it's off the screen. So that's that. We'll move on. I just wanted to mention that part because I shouldn't leave things out just because myself is afraid. So working at Lisa Frank sounds like a total nightmare. And if you leave, the nightmare doesn't end. So if you try to leave the company, they fail to give promised severance packages. They fought unemployment benefits. Yes, they fought unemployment benefits. And former employees had to sue them to get their final paychecks. That is time you work for. You can't put your emotions into something. If you're mad somebody quit, you still have to pay them for the time they worked. So it just shows how childish and... So Lisa Frank didn't just treat their employees bad. Whenever they worked with like contractors and builders and stuff, there are suits against Lisa Frank because they did not pay. Yeah, here's just a few things you can look at. Builders seek $4 million. It's not a little bit of money. That's a lot of bit of money. So they had a series of lawsuits from local contractors and builders. They claimed they hadn't been paid $4 million worth of work on the corporate headquarters. The next thing that happens is the divorce. And this this is what kicks off all the legal battles. All the reason we're having these court documents is because Lisa files for divorce from James Crane. When she files for divorce, she decides, I'm taking control of the company again. James and Rhonda, they formed this, they already have a working relationship and the not so working relationship, but they form an even stronger bond at this point because now it's like Lisa versus us. We're not stepping down without a fight. And that's what happens. They get into a huge fight. But let's go back to when Lisa files for divorce. Nobody at the company is surprised by this news because they all saw it coming. This was a tumultuous relationship, and it sounds like there was a lot of yelling all the time. According to Karen, years before Lisa even files for divorce, she would test the waters regularly, asking people, if James and I divorced, would you stay with the company? So Lisa Frank moves out of the home with James, and she starts getting more involved in the day-to-day activities. So once this is starting to happen, James and Rhonda are like, oh no, we know what's coming. They start stealing things from the factory. They start telling employees they need to choose a side. They're putting people in a pretty uncomfortable position by doing that. So, okay, Lisa starts, coming back in the day-to-day activities. And James is still there when she comes back to start doing this. And so one former employee, Kyle, said, he got art direction from Lisa. Lisa is in charge, right? It's her company. Well, right after that, then James would come in behind Lisa and be like, no, I'm running the company. You do it my way. I'm in charge. So he would go undermine everything Lisa was doing. He was so threatened by her power. Lisa's not in charge. I'm in charge. Could you imagine working for that? Having one boss tell you, you know she's the boss, but the other guy had been the boss for so long that he's coming in, and they both can fire you. So it's like, oh, I just want to do what you're telling me to do, but I'm getting conflicting messages on what to do. You know, some of this is to artists on artwork direction. It's like, I have to draw this. You told me one way, you told me another. Who do I listen to? And James and Rhonda were like trying to get people to pick sides. Talk about anxiety work environment. They would go up to people and be like, hey, if the company splits, you're coming with us, right? So one of the things Lisa did when she started taking back over was spying, just like James and Rhonda had done. And I guess James didn't like this, and he thought, oh, you can't do that, you can't listen in. And it's just kind of hypocritical, don't you think, James? In addition to these actions, Ms. Frank Green, did Lisa take James's last name? This is the first time I've seen her referred to as that. Has directed Lisa Frank Inc.'s outside computers consultant to provide her with access to all Lisa Frank Inc. employee emails, email accounts, and upon information and belief has used this access to closely monitor all employee communications, delete company emails, and redirect company emails, creating a siege-like atmosphere. I don't know if that's illegal or not to monitor emails if it's your company. The part that really stood out to me, though, was redirecting and deleting company emails. I didn't realize you could do that. So somebody sent an email to someone and she made it go to somebody else? Or do they just mean redirect, like also send it to me, please? So Lisa and James, they have to have other people involved in every single aspect of their divorce because they cannot come to agreement on anything. There's a court document for them splitting up family photos. There's a court document for them splitting up furniture, and so on and so forth. I don't even want to know how much money this cost them. Oh, I mean, but they're ultra rich. I guess that this is how they want to spend their money. So the lawsuits between Lisa Frank and James go on for years. There's also lawsuits involving Rhonda and Rhonda's husband. Here is the list. You can see it's really long. I'm going to talk about a few of them, but if you want to know more, as with any part of the factory section that we've just skimmed, go to this article. There is so much here. Okay, September 2005, Lisa files her suit against James to get him out. Then he does his countersuit, and this is kind of funny about the countersuit. So Lisa had this agreement. It was called a buy-sell agreement. It said that if Lisa and James ever got a divorce, that Lisa, if she wanted to, could buy back James's shares, whether he wanted to sell them or not. He had this agreement with her, and now he's fighting it like, I don't want this agreement anymore. Well, that's not how agreements work, James. But Lisa did want the shares back when they got divorced. Then there's more suits. Lisa saying like, oh, Rhonda's husband, Jerry, and James tried to steal truckloads of stuff from the company, tried to use company money for personal use. Rhonda sued because she didn't get a severance package. This one stood out to me because it involves their children, and I think what James did was wrong. These are wealthy people. They have more than one company. There's a company that they have called Green Bean Investments. James Green Bean Investments. James has 47.5% ownership. His sons, who were minors, children at the time, had 5%. And so what he tried to do is use Green Bean Investments to take over Lisa Frank. He says, we own the property that Lisa Frank is on. They're both their companies, you know, when they were all together. Now everything's getting split up. He's like, you didn't pay rent, so I'm evicting you, and I'm taking this. I don't know what their rent agreement was or whatever. But the point is, he tried to involve his sons 5% with his 47.5%. That would be over 50%. It's just him trying to weasel in and take control. The court dismisses this, but James doesn't let it drop. So that was March 2008. So he comes back and tries to do the exact same thing, same argument in October of 2009. Like, this man has been stewing. But there's a difference. This time, he writes a written demand to his children, who were 13 years old and 9 years old at the time, telling them they need to give him consent to take action against their mother, Lisa's property. So he's trying to force them to give the consent, because they didn't give the consent before. And now he's like, no, you will give consent. That's not what a good father does. I had to change my clothes. My apartment is getting too hot. So these lawsuits, they go on for a while. Finally, Lisa gets control again, and she greatly reduces the number of staff. It goes from 350 people to just 6 people, and they decide not to do their own manufacturing. They outsource that. The Jezebel article was great. From here, though, we're going to move on. Goodbye, Jezebel article. Thank you for all of that information, but we have more to cover. So I'm going to get into where Lisa is now, but I want to end the James and Rhonda segment before we move on with Lisa, because once I go to Lisa, it wouldn't make sense to come back to James, because we're leaving him after this. James converted from Judaism to Christianity soon after all the Lisa Frank drama. He started a clothing line. So him and Rhonda went and started a business. Now, I want to emphasize something, because in my TikTok video, I think it's not very clear. I have nothing against Christians. In fact, I think that James is taking advantage of Christians, is what it seems like to me. This is tricky because I don't want to assume what James believes or doesn't believe. But when you see what I'm about to show you, it puts me in a position where I feel conflicted. Let me just show you. He has this site, Christian Man, or James Christian Man. It says Christian Man up here, but up here it's James Christian Man. And I don't know if that's Rhonda, but I know he does run it with Rhonda. So let's go look at the designs, I guess. So, oh, they really like bumped the contrast up on all these pictures. It's very interesting. So they have all these shirts, right? It's like his upscale clothing line. How do I, oh, shop. Let's go shop. I thought he's like some artist. His website doesn't look like he is. Okay. So he's got t-shirts for like 55, 65, 45. Okay. But let's keep going. 95. Such a big discrepancy in price. He's got these Christian shirts. 33, but this one's 125. I don't understand what's going on with the discrepancies. Every car that drives by is so incredibly loud. Okay. And then he's like limited designer. They're all him, I thought. These are all you? Why is this one limited? Just because you made less of them? Lamb of God, interesting choice. $195. Redeemer, $155. It just, I don't know, there's something about the ethics of selling $200 shirts, but then being like, this is in the name of Christ. Would that just, I don't know. I should ask my family. A lot of my family is Christian. I should have asked them before making this, what they think of this. Okay, not much information. I was looking for a bigger description or more pictures, but I guess not. And so, yeah. Oh, they have a Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. No true Christian can afford to be ignorant of prophecy in these days. We are on the threshold of the second coming and the rapture. We may feel as though everything is coming apart, but everything is fitting into the sockets of prophecy. We are in the great tribulation. And then he's wearing the $200. I hope he's not saying, and so you need to buy this $200 shirt. How many followers does he have? Wow, he has actually a lot. He wrote this about himself. James A. Green, creator of one of the most iconic brands of its time, magnifying the Lord through his artistic talents and philanthropic efforts. Is this a sign of things to come? Revelation says yes. There will be a time of great persecution for the saints in tribulation. Church that defied coronavirus restrictions is burned to the ground. Oh, so he's like one of those doomsday ones. I see. Okay, so let's see. The mark of the beast is coming. RFID chip. Oh, one of those. If you get anything in your skin, that's the mark of the beast. We see dark and demonic powers at work in the world today. At the sign. Oh, I keep forgetting that this whole thing is to sell stuff. This is his clothing website. I was thinking it was his personal Facebook for a second, but it's not. This is his James Christian Man web or clothing line Facebook. Can I please reiterate? I have nothing against Christians. I have something against James though. So I don't want it to come off like I don't like Christians. Jesus told his disciples that if they owned no swords to purchase them. Oh. God is waiting for knees to bow in submission before he resolves international conflict. That is his condition for peace. Okay. I'm going to stop with James. Let's keep moving forward. That's where he is. If you want to look him up, it's James Christian Man. Go ahead and find him. So now the year is 2013. That's where we are on the timeline. Frank's namesake company is a fraction of what it was, and she has essentially disappeared. Her factory, once bustling with hundreds of employees, has 6 staff members. And this is when we start getting into the warehouse going up for sale. It's been on and off the market for years. So around this time, Lisa Frank does an interview with Urban Outfitters. And in that interview, she chooses not to show her face. She just shows like her profile.
I'm Lisa Frank, and for everyone who wants to know if I do exist, I do exist. I'm a real person. We're in my office in Tucson, Arizona. What encompasses the world of Lisa Frank? That would first and foremost probably be rainbows, and then hearts, music notes, teddy bears, unicorns, stars, color, fantasy, jewels, glints, everything that makes a kid happy, smile.
And they do show inside the factory a little bit. So at this point, there weren't very many employees, but they're still going to work in this huge factory. So let's take a look at the factory. I did talk about this in the TikTok, but let's look a little more. So I'm going to turn on a screen recording. The warehouse has been on and off the market for years. Here it is. Oh, sorry, my cat. Okay, so, ooh, the inside, it looks so office-y, like 90s office with those drop ceilings. Ooh, I'm just thinking about what those people experienced in there. All those stories we just heard happened right there. And let's walk around. Here it is. Oh my goodness. This is so eerie. Just the chain fence, the overgrown plants. You can see the walls, like just all the sun damage. I don't think we can go into the parking lot on Street View. Here, let's try. No, look, the arrow's pointing that way. No, I don't think we can go in. Here, wait, let's go to the front entrance really quick before we get out of here. Oh, and if you go to my TikTok, you can see the story behind Lisa Frank Avenue. Drama behind that. Oop. Oh, no. Why is it doing that? I'm unclicking it. It's acting like I'm clicked. Stop it! Oh, there's the entrance. Something's wrong with this. I'm not clicking. Like, I'm not touching it. It's acting like I'm holding the clicker down. There's the entrance. See the glass? Try and see. Well, I guess we can't see the entrance. Okay. Well, there it is. Let's get out of here. Ooh, a 2017 brochure. There's the entrance. Look, you can see when it had landscaping. Look how much nicer it looks here. Oh my gosh, look at the rocks. So they're asking $17 million. Site plan. First floor, what's this? Second floor. These pictures look so much nicer. This is like the same angle. I don't know. These are the same pictures. Why did they look nicer here? Oh, it has a gym. Oh, this must be where they got yelled at when they gave presentations. Lunchroom. Ooh, aerial. Okay. Well, there it is. We kind of just looked at it there, but you didn't get a good look at the street view. So I'm going to do another quick screen recording because I have a computer. This is from weburbanist.com, and these pictures are from, I think, 2017. So here you can see better of the abandoned factory. Oh, correction. I wanted to say, where is it? Da-da-da. Here it is. Mostly abandoned. Because I was calling it abandoned. Because, I mean, it says abandoned, but it says mostly abandoned. And here's the thing. When it said, oh, our employees have dwindled from 350 to 6 employees, that was a few years ago. I couldn't find anything about what's going on today or like 2019, somewhere more recent. I don't know how many employees they have today, and I'm not sure if they are still going to that building. Maybe they still meet there. I know it's been on and off the market for years now. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that. Okay, so let's keep going. Oh, and they even, it's not just painted, they put the engraving around it. That's permanent. Like, even if you paint over, you're still going to see those music notes. Da, da, da. The entrance. Oh, look. Is that board? Oh, no. I think that's the material. I was going to say it's boarded up, but I don't think it is. Oh, yeah. I remember this from the TikTok. Look at these. The sun. Well, the Arizona sun is, like, incredible. Lisa loves these golden retrievers. This looks so much nicer than it did on Street View. Okay, so those are them. Oh, on the TikTok, there was something else I wanted to talk about. Oh, there was something I wanted to clear up from the TikTok. So when I showed the abandoned building in my TikTok, I showed this picture of, it looks like a metallic horse now, but apparently it used to be a unicorn that had lost its horn. And I had somebody comment saying, well, Tucson is full of these metallic horses. That was just a horse. It didn't ever have a horn. It didn't lose its horn. And then I had other people comment like, well, I live in Tucson and I've never seen these horses that you're talking about. Like, what do you mean? So if you live in Tucson, please let me know. Are there metallic horses all over Tucson? Also, then I was wondering, I wouldn't make something up, you know, I wouldn't just assume something. I had to have read that. So I was like, wait. So I looked back and I figured out, I got this from the Jezebel article, and that article was so informative that I was pretty trusting of it. But, I mean, someone who lives on Tucson is going to know better than I do from reading an article. So with that, I'm kind of going to sum up that section. That was like the Lisa Frank past section. Now we're going to move further into the future. First, I want to talk about the Kickstarter with Lisa Frank, and then I want to revisit the Amina Mucciolo situation. So let's get into it. I feel like this is multiple deep dives in one deep dive, but hey, it's not a deep dive, it's a deeper dive, so makes sense.